Hello, everyone, and welcome back, SNDL community. Let's talk about federal reform. That is going to be the topic. So, we're going to be talking a little bit more about the industry in general. Now, I'm very curious to look at the charts. So, let's take a look at the charts because this 20-day moving average, you can see the price has really still been trying to stay below that, with that exception, that 20% run up when this came down to about 29 cents. Now it's starting to revisit a new low, and we know that press release came out after everyone was emailed at a different time the voting instructions. So depending on your brokerage for SNDL, you probably got a notification at some point in time. I know Webull just came out shortly after Robinhood, and let me know in the comments below. Did you vote already? I shared with you in the last video how I voted. If you have any questions, please reach out. I don't mind answering those questions. So this is still not a buy, in my opinion. I think there's too much risk leading up to the reverse stock split, but there may be a bump in between for those traders. There may be a bump tomorrow to buy some if this dips low enough. With those CPI numbers coming out on the 13th, we still have some time. We know that there's not going to be a reverse stock split until the 22nd potentially. So they're going to vote on this on July 21st. It'll probably get announced on the 22nd. This is the highest probability. So there's really this sort of safe window of adding to your position, because what if something does happen, some news comes out to slightly elevate this to where when it does drop down because the announcement happens, it really doesn't reach these levels that we're starting to see, or we could potentially see tomorrow. The 30 on the RSI needs to break. You need to be down here, and it's not there yet. The volume trade for today, we've got SNDL still up at the top, and what I'm curious to see is after the reverse stock split, of course, that market cap's going to come down. It's going to enable this to be more volatile as we combine those shares together, either 1 to 25 or 1 to 10. And in my last video, I explained how to put a price in your chart and see where this price is going to go post consolidation. Now, I'm very interested in also Canopy and what's happening with Hexo and a few other plays, and we're going to be talking about those also. Now, let's talk about federal reform. I really want to spend some time talking about what's green on the chart, and the shades of green just kind of give you a visual representation. You can look at this very quickly and just see what is gray and what is orange. And there is a lot of adoption, and I would say federal reform is most likely to happen this year. And we're starting to hear reports, and I'm listening to interviews of people talking about how likely it is, and that big banks and companies are starting to come up with these plans. So I think things can move very quickly as this adoption happens, as this federal reform starts to take place. Not legalization, but I want to talk about federal reform. Now, before we get into that, Moomoo account, 10 free shares if you click on the link in the comments below. If you're new to trading, you don't have a Moomoo account, I would say Moomoo is great for news. I have stopped using stock tweets and I've been using Moomoo 100%. If I want to look at a stock and know exactly what's happening with that and get to the filings fast, nothing's been working for me better than Moomoo. Now, I do want to talk about OTC in this also, and Webull has just started this process of allowing you to trade OTC. There are some cannabis stocks, and this has been brutal. It's been a 15-month drop across the board, but I believe green is in the pastures coming up very soon. I think we're starting to see signs of the bottom in this market, this sector, cannabis, flower. Support the channel. It's as little as $5. And I would say get in the Discord and talk with us about what trades you're looking at. The small community that we do have, I know that they've done well. And the next thing that I want to talk about is stock exchanges, right? I mean, as we start to see this bipartisan bill, and it's probably going to go in this next defense bill that's coming out, it could bring some of these OTC listed stocks to the public market. So you really want to pay attention to that could be a next step of this federal reform, the Safe Banking Act getting passed. So that way banks can, I mean, it is absolutely absurd that they can't function as legitimate businesses, and they can't open bank accounts, they can't get banking loans, they can't remove cash from the system, which makes it dangerous for their business to operate and makes them a target in some cases. With Washington State this year, there was around 50 armed robberies. I was reading an article of dispensaries in just January and February, and that's just one state. These businesses just can't operate like a normal business. So safe banking introduced as an amendment to the 2023 National Defense Authorization Act. I think they're going to try and put pieces of this together to get it passed. And this is part of that federal reform that I hope we see. So this could be a catalyst. We could see this start taking place as early as August, and something that we haven't spent a lot of time talking about. So I think it's just absolutely terrible that robbers or any kind of target happens on businesses. Me being a small business owner myself, I mean, I just couldn't imagine if coming to work I had to fear of that next robbery that might take place. So I hope they completely eliminate cash and do not accept it in the future. And this is something that's part of the past. Two separate amendments to the NDAA. So what I'm looking at is what else is happening that's kind of causing this federal reform. And what we're seeing is even in the military, they have started to modify their UCMJ action. And me being prior service, you know, there's a different military action that happens to civilians, that happens to the military, and the military have to go through their own law system, and then they can get penalized by the civilian law system too. So they're also looking at adopting and modifying that. So you're seeing that, and this is recent. This is as of 2 weeks ago. So that's also another positive thing. Now the Section 280E and the taxation of cannabis businesses, this is another part of the Internal Revenue Code that prohibits taxpayers who are engaged in the business of trafficking certain controlled substances, most notably from deducting typical business expenses associated with those activities. So can you imagine not only what's happening with big banks and companies, and that this is a DA Scheduled 1 drug, but when this federal reform starts to take place, you can see as these things start to happen and we legitimize these legal businesses to be able to do banking loans, I mean, this is just going to be a major catalyst. And I would tell you, as we talk about what the good entry point would be, this is still going to be a long-term investment. You just got to pick the right company. Now, I like SNDL for this catalyst, but that Xenonbus transaction has me worried. Now, Zach takes pride in transforming organizations, and I can only imagine how excited he is to prove that he could do with Xenonbus that nobody could. And since the existence of Xenonbus, and I've covered this in a previous video, be sure to check that out. You know, maybe he can turn this one around too, but it's been burning cash since it begun. But maybe the timing is perfect for them to enter into a medical market as this federal reform takes place. Now, Nova Cannabis is something that we're all supposed to be issued, and this is on the OTC market, and that's why I'm saying in this channel, we got to start talking about OTC because we need some OTC exposure. Not only are we going to be a shareholder potentially of OTC shares, and should we keep those, should we sell them? I would say at this price where there's been a low of 51 cents, if we take a look at the 6-month chart for Nova, I mean, you can see it's had the same type of decline, that 55 to 65% decline. And this is, everything is going to take an uptick once we see federal reform pass. Now, I do want to talk about Xenonbus because there is an update, and I've got that stalking horse bid agreement. I've got the timeline. I've covered this in a previous video, and I wanted to make sure we got ahead in this channel of the timeline because we want to be proactive instead of reactive. So by no later than August 15th of 2022 by 5 p.m., this is when the phase 1 bid deadline for the delivery of those LOIs or letters of intent. And so everything is due, to keep it quite simple, by August 15th. So I would say that there could potentially be some news catalyst that comes from SNDL if they're the only ones interested, the only ones that want to touch this, between August 15th and August 22nd. I would say before that, not only if you have earnings that's going to be published around the same time, but we definitely want to be paying attention to this stock within that time window. It's just something else, a news catalyst that could come out. I see there being a positive response, even though this business has burned cash. Nobody's going to care about that. They're going to see a medical arm for SNDL post reverse stock split, and with an earnings coming up, it's just going to be another catalyst. So the company invested in canopy growth is something else I wanted to bring up. The Constellation Brands, or STZ, it's really interesting to take a look at the companies that are targets, not the companies that will acquire. I would say, Constellation Brands, STZ would be an interesting to look at for those support levels. But when do we look at Canopy with this huge stake? We're talking about, this is what Sundial just did, right? They took a beer, wine, spirit brand and they acquired it. Now, this is the other way around. This is a beer, wine, spirit brand looking to acquire a flower brand or cannabis company. So I think it's really interesting. This article reads, feel free to pause it. I don't like reading things to you, but basically the stake that they have, and some of you might already know this, the stake that they have in Canopy is very interesting. So speaking about the companies to be acquired potentially, I also like Hexo, and I talked about this at the beginning of the video. This is one to watch, and it's not that I like it with the timing right now, but I do like the fact that they spun off Xenonbus. That was something that was draining cash from the company. Maybe they can do better with the cost synergies that they're sharing with Tilray now. So Tilray, Hexo, having this partnership, the two companies, via an agreement that became official in mid-April, hope to save $80 million in annual cost synergies. So a very important strategic partnership there. A 1 to 14 potential reverse stock split that Hexo may be going through, and why it's driven that stock price down. Maybe something worth paying attention to, since SNDL is going through something similar. Green Thumb, right? This is a buy. You could see that same 55 to 65 drop. If you're not familiar with OTC stocks, I would say to do some digging into this, that the early observations that I did in this stock, they look very positive. And then the last one that I wanted to bring up is True Leaf Cannabis. And this is also another OTC that is one that I'm going to be looking closer into, but also you can see that 6-month chart of that 55 to 65% drop since all-time highs. And I believe these are starting to get so low that with this federal legislation, the next thing that would happen is, it starts to become okay to list some of these on the New York Stock Exchange. And what a major catalyst for some of these really solid OTC stocks that the New York Stock Exchange has not allowed to uplist just due to their rules. And because this is a DA scheduled 1 drug. That's all I got. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you know what to do, and I'll see you in the next one.